This is a question from Samuel Seeger.
Yeah.
Anyone owning up to a question?
I wrote it before I knew we had to keep a copy.
What's your back?
I think I can remember it fairly well. Should the electorate vote on May the 6th reflect current polls, i.e. a third, in terms of seats awarded, in what way, I'd like the panel's view, in what way this hung parliament would possibly result in weak government, given that it's the view of the electorate?
Yes.
A bit of a leading question. You've made your mind up by the sound of it. Actually, polls suggest that most people in Britain think a hung parliament would be a good idea. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people think it's time that politicians stopped the sort of bear pit of Parliament and started cooperating with one another. We see it all over the rest of Europe. I know people will raise the spectre of Italy, a special case, I hasten to add. But they've had coalitions in Scandinavia, in Germany, very successful economies. And they've had arrangements in many countries around the world. We are pretty unique in having a system where the Labour government, not a member of the government yet, but the Labour Party managed to get into government at the last election with getting just 22% of the votes of the people of this country. That is a scandal. It can't be right. And in fact, if you even take the people who actually voted, it's 36%. So there's 65% of the population said we don't want Labour, and they still got them. That is a system that has got to change. And I think people are finally coming round to the idea that it ought to. And it's getting a lot of support in the polls. People do want a hung parliament. I'll tell you another good reason why we want a hung parliament is because we'll have Vince Cable as our Chancellor instead of George Osborne.
Thank you. I'm going to turn a little bit more this way. Good God, this is lots more people than I thought. Alex Salmond said something interesting on this, and you don't normally hear that sentence, do you? But Alex Salmond has started talking about balanced parliaments instead of hung parliaments. And it's a subtle difference of describing the same thing. A hung parliament suggests a state of suspension before another election in November. But in Scotland, where there is a minority administration, they've kept the show on the road for a number of years, first with a Labour administration, now with an SNP one. And what that suggests to me that it is possible for balanced parliaments to produce strong executives. And you can't say, in theory, that hung balanced parliaments are always a bad thing. You can't say they're always a good thing. It depends upon the parties that have decided to go in together. Now, I'm answering this, of course, in the abstract and in theory. It's way below my pay grade to even begin thinking about who Labour may or may not be in partnership with. But I would say this. Had, back in the 80s, those people in the Labour Party who were fighting against militant not been deserted by people who left that party to go and form the SDP, and had the SDP not then joined in with the Liberal Party, which was dying on its feet, there wouldn't be a Liberal Democrat Party today. There would have been a stronger Labour Party, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Now, contrary to what you might think I'm about to say, I'm glad that there is a third party in politics, because it does keep both other parties honest now and again, and it sort of tells us. I don't mean in the sense of honesty, sorry, I misspoke, but it does act as a useful guide, and it's been clear in this election so far, hasn't it, that there's been a brief uplift. It is a brief uplift in the Liberal Democrat poll. So, yes, balanced parliaments can work. I hope we don't get one after this election.
Of course, our party would love a hung parliament. It's exactly what we want. We want a hung parliament with a handful of UKIP actual MPs because then we can start to do something. And what we're looking for is a strong UKIP vote that will send a message to these other parties that the British people do care about Britishness and don't want to give it away to become Europeans. So I'm very happy about a hung parliament.
Yes, I would agree. The hung parliament would be absolutely fantastic. Think about it. Think about it. Think about the situation we've got at the moment. You have the party whips who get told, tell the people the way that they must vote. So the primary decisions are made not by you, and not by the politicians, they're made by the Prime Minister. All right? And that's, somebody said an unelected Prime Minister effectively. Yes. So you can't have that sort of thing. People put their voices forward, write to their MPs and say, I'm really concerned about X. And I did that. I wrote about the digital economy bill. I got a fantastic bit back from my MP saying the shadow minister thought that it was a really bad idea to have the digital economy bill go through. Didn't make a blind bit difference. Didn't make a blind bit difference what I thought. And I think that a hung parliament would mean that you had negotiated, you'd have to have tactics and negotiations between the minority parties. The whips wouldn't matter as much because there would be that balance of power of things. So I think it'd be absolutely great.
Well, I think people are very worried about the prospect of a hung parliament because it does bring in a huge element of uncertainty into British politics, and unemployment's gone up to 2.5 million. A lot of people are worried about their jobs, they're worried about their families, they're worried about their children's future.